Welcome to episode 171 of the Startup Show. Today, for the first time here from the globaltechbox.com studio. And I'm very excited to meet with the CEO and co-founder of Stairlin, Bastien. And we are talking about what they do, how they help SMEs to digitalize the entire process from beginning to end for their clients, and really making sure that everything works smoothly. We also talk about which kind of advice you should listen to, and overall about the ecosystem here in Switzerland. Make sure you stay tuned for the whole episode, and I'll see you there. Welcome to episode 171 of the Startup Show. Today, for the very first time, we are here at the brand new globaltechbox.com studio, and I'm very excited to host our first guest, Bastien, who is the CEO and co-founder of Stairlin. Bastien, welcome to the show. It's really exciting to have you here. As usual, and it's very traditional here on the Startup Show that every founder gets to introduce themselves to my audience. So please take it away. Tell us who you are.
Well, first off, hello Cédric. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to start here in this new office. To introduce myself, you stated my name already, but basically I have technical background. I worked in multiple small companies here in Switzerland as a software engineer, front-end or back-end engineer, before I decided to start my own company. And in my previous job, that's where I met Tibault, who co-founded Stairlin with me, who himself has a business background. So when we had the idea of Stairlin, we thought also we had a very complementary profile.
That's how you started. What kind of inspired you to get started? I mean, especially when you work in corporate and here in Switzerland, I mean, it's not so simple to just make this transition into entrepreneurship. What was it that is this is the idea, I have to try it?
I wouldn't say the transition itself was difficult, but the idea, so it was mainly we were having regular coffee with Tibault, and we're just thinking every time we want to go to the local shop, whether it's a haircut, whether it's for your dentist, it's always the same process, the same struggle that you have to call, and then you have this ping pong to find a day that matches, and that was the initial idea. It was just a pain to get a service. And especially knowing that nowadays, when you have services like Uber, Airbnb, just to name a few, the user experience is so great that you feel like there is a gap between some services that you can get. Like in New York, you can get your Airbnb so easily, but your local shop here in Zurich is, wherever else in Switzerland, is difficult to get.
Before we go too much into a deep dive into what Stairlin actually
excited.
does, maybe give your pitch, your elevator pitch to my audience, so we're all on the same page, because I guess till now they don't even know what you guys do at Stairlin.
So Stairlin is basically it's a one-stop shop for self-employed. So whether you're a therapist, a hairstylist, photographer, so any kind of self-employed who provides services, usually you have an appointment, like a one-on-one appointment with a customer. Stairlin is there to help you create and grow your business. So that means concretely what Stairlin does is it helps you taking care of your schedule, making appointments, whether it's online booking or not, taking care of your finance, taking care of your customer relationship, the interactions you have with your customers. So we basically have a small set of tools, very simple tools, but very powerful because they're connected together. So it takes off all this friction, because we realize that whether you're a therapist, whether you're a photographer, you have the same basic problems. So that was our conclusion.
Yes. So now, I mean, you talk a lot about the iterating process, really trying to figure out what the clients really need. How do you feel is kind of this digital approach of these small SMEs, these companies that are kind of not corporates, but they're not startups, somewhere in between? Are they willing to adopt to digital solutions?
Yes. The thing is, the approach is different than a bigger company for us, the way we approach these people, because it's a B2B market, but at the same time, they behave sometimes more it's somewhere in between B2B, B2C. So it's very interesting because when you're self-employed, you're the decision maker, you're the person working, you're the person doing the job, preparing invoice, doing everything. So in that sense, for us, it's a challenging market. But to answer then your question about digital, yes. So they're interested. Sometimes because out of curiosity, because they'll just like digital stuff.
Yes.
And sometimes also because they realize that they're lagging behind other people. They compare the website, for example, to other people's websites. They know that young people are no longer making any appointments. So sometimes it's either out of interest or because they've realized it's just not working anymore.
What is, let's say, the key challenge that they are, like you said, like the booking is one of them, but when you look at the whole process from beginning to end, what do you see is like the biggest challenge that that these SMEs are facing?
Well, when we started with the idea of online reservations, they don't really see that as a big challenge at first sight. They've realized more and more that people want it, they ask for it. So that becomes increasingly important to them. But the first thing they told us is, yeah, my main problem is invoices, getting paid, people who don't show up to all the no-shows. They have like sometimes 2-3 no-shows per week. So those are a problem. So people not showing up. When you prepare invoices, you send it to the wrong person, that kind of things, Let's say it's a lot of human mistakes sometimes.
Yes. Bureaucratic and it's administrative, sounds like.
Yes, it's basic for everyone, right? Every kind of business, the main struggle they have is, being paid, having enough customers. So I think it's the same thing at just a different scale in the end.
For me, it's interesting to hear, like specifically, like the target market that you're addressing. It's very hard sometimes to distinguish between what type of company a certain company is. How do you kind of like address like this issue? What are, like, let's say, the best clients or like the target clients that you're looking at? And kind of like, what is the market, the target addressable market that you're looking at right now?
Self-employed is very broad, it's true. So that's why first off, we narrowed down with you provide services like one-on-one services, like a masseur, like any kind of therapist or even a driving school instructor. In the future, we're also thinking about expanding like to group reservations, but right now it's like one-on-one. So it already narrows down to a smaller subset. And right now, our main focus is the health industry. So really, people who are acupuncturists, osteopath, those are right now our main target. But we have also other customers, hairstylists, photographers, or driving schools.
A little bit of everything. Like you have a beautiful website. I really like the design of the website.
Okay.
But maybe you can elaborate a little bit, like kind of like where you stand in the process of the development. I mean, like a beautiful website is usually not an indicator for the actual product, but maybe you can say a little bit like where you stand.
Well, thank you for the website. It took time to, I think I mentioned that to different people. It's like it took us a while to find a way to explain clearly what we do. It took a lot of iterations just to explain clearly what Stairlin is about. So the thing is, the product evolves, but also the way you present the product changes over the time. So right now, what we have is what we call the foundations. We've built the foundations right now with the product where you can manage or you schedule, manage your customer interactions and your finance. And what we want to do is expand this to payment, like getting paid, all the customer interactions. So that means, for example, when people very frequently like text you with WhatsApp, SMS, email. So you have a lot of different channels where you can get messages from your customers. So we want to aggregate that. Our idea is this, to aggregate everything in a tool. But I guess we can go further into the details about future.
No, but I'm saying, like, where do you stand right now? If a client comes and wants to use your product, like, what can they find online? If they sign up and become a client?
Yeah, so that's the part about the foundation is their schedule, their finance, and everything about their customer interaction. So let's say if we want to dig down on this part is when we talk about schedule is being able to make reservations. You also have let's say a small website, just like you would have a page like on Facebook. So you have a page on Stairlin where you can present your business to the world. You can have online reservations if you like on it. Basically, the ideal process that you would have is people making reservations online. So they sign up, they add their contact details, and then you get a reservation on your calendar. It will automatically update. You say, okay, I have a reservation, I have an invoice with that person. And then, of course, then you have your finance, the invoice prepared already for this reservation. So that's what we want to do is like take care of this whole journey from the moment where the customer wants to have a service to the moment where he paid for the service.
Right. One of the things that venture capitalists and investors in general are obviously curious to know is kind of like, okay, like what is your vision? Which I understand, you digitalize the process, but that like how can you like really make this a let's say a unicorn, $1 billion company, where you say like, okay, we can really scale to a massive amount, which is like one of the key questions that like any VC will ask you.
The first thing is we switched to how we package Stairlin and what we want to do with it. So the first thing we had in mind was this idea of assistant, which is usually when people think of an assistant is like a nice to have. Whereas now we have this one-stop shop. So the idea with the one-stop shop is, I don't know exactly if it was in the 60s, exactly 70s, people were just thinking if you have a business, you need a phone. And then people were thinking in the 2000s, I need a website. And then 2010, I need an app. So people were just thinking, this is what I need to start a business. And what we want to do is actually now in 2020, people thinking, if I want to start a business, I'm a self-employed, I need something like Stairlin. Because Stairlin, what it will do, besides the foundation, what we envision for the future is also having your finance on it. Because right now we have your income, but we still don't have your spending. So that's something we're planning to work on. It can be things like your insurances. A lot of things can be packed into this package to grow your business. That's something, of course, that is available, would work definitely in Switzerland. And obviously, from the very beginning, we've built this app to be internationalized as well. So expanding, of course, I don't think you can create $1 billion company in Switzerland alone. But if you expand, then
it can be very interesting.
Yeah.
I would like to move now kind of like to the end of the life cycle of a company. What is your plan? Let's say, are you more looking into like an IPO or a trade sale, or like you maybe have no plans yet?
I don't know. When you start your own company, it's been three years now that we're actively thinking about Stairlin. From our perspective, Tibault, I'm sure that he shares the same opinion on this.
Well, we see it then.
Yes. I need to double check if it has changed. But the thing is, we're not thinking about any kind of IPO, or at this point, we're still pour so much passion into this company that we still want to continue to grow the company. So that is our main goal at this point.
Let's say you succeed to really get enough SMEs on your platform to make it a profitable business or to scale it, but then you will have a lot of insights into like these different companies. Especially on the data end. Like I'm not saying like you have to analyze specifically like companies, but like overall you can have like probably patterns, data. Have you ever put in some thoughts what can be done once you have this data?
Yes, of course. I didn't want to start with the buzzwords, but the thing is, yes. So that's something very early on we're thinking, how could we leverage this data for the business themselves or the people? So we had this idea, for example, if you start your business, sometimes you're a therapist. So what are you going to do? You're going to compare maybe your prices compared to others. So one thing we could do is, for example, saying people in your city usually price this much for a service. Or another thing that we could say is this is probably the best time for you to go on holidays, because sometimes people are saying, oh, usually in March I don't have that many customers, so I'm going on holidays, and then they book their holidays, and then they have a lot of customers. So the idea, yes, is to give them a lot of insights to the business owners, and of course, even for the country itself, for Switzerland, like for the SECO here in Switzerland, it could be interesting to know all the SMEs in the country, because the SMEs in Switzerland are
a very important part of the economy.
Exactly,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So it could be interesting to know how they're going.
I mean, like, do you see any kind of like trends? I mean, like we know in Switzerland in general, like as you said, like SMEs are very important. But nevertheless, I think like we see a global trend of freelancing, also like, smaller companies, digital nomads. Is this like something that you also see like kind of like a general trend on a global scale? Maybe detached a little bit from Stairlin, but kind of like the market research you have done?
Yes, I've read something. It was, I think he was a teacher at the University of Lausanne. He said something like, I don't know if it was in the 90s or 2000, he was asking all the students would like to work for
the big corporates,
the big corporates, and like the majority of people wanted to. They were, but it switched to now. It's just a few. People realize that having your own business, at least as a part of your, just having a different source of income, is something that people think about. Not maybe 100% at the beginning, but we have a lot of people who subscribe to Stairlin because we also have a pricing that allows them to just start with maybe a few appointments a month. They dedicate this for as a yoga teacher, or even though they might not be sport coaches on their for the remaining part of their week. It's difficult at our scale to see that there is a trend, but we definitely read a lot about trends that are going in this direction.
Now, if you look back, what has been your biggest challenge running the business?
Working with people can be one of the most rewarding thing and the most challenging thing at the same time.
Yes.
Yes. So I think it's challenging. Yeah.
You have one example without stating any name, obviously.
I've managed people in my previous jobs, but the thing is, here it's your own company. So the thing is, you have a lot of context switching. You have to be software engineer, and then you have to go have a chat with investors, and then you have to do a bit of marketing, a bit of customer support. So you have a lot of different things that you have to do, and you don't necessarily have experience to do. When you have not a lot of experience, and then you have to work with other people, it can be difficult just to make sure that we still have this respect, even though, and we're learning together. We're on the same boat in the end. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, for sure. How do you achieve and maintain a balanced life?
I didn't for the first year. I was like all out on stage. No, really, because I thought this is my dream. I always wanted to do this until I realized, well, it's actually not a sprint, it's a marathon. And then I need to do something else. I started like CrossFit, went like 3 times a week. So that was actually a way for me to, because I always like very mental, working on whether it's software, everything is that very intellectual, and going somewhere and being like doing a bit of sports, it surprisingly helped to maintain. Of course, being healthy, it just helps. If you don't have like back pain and then you have to sit the whole day, it helps. But at the same time, I felt like it also helped me to build a good character. I think sport helps a lot.
What was one experience where you failed at something, but you had a learning at the end?
That happens not every day. I won't say every day, but very, very often. I think that's the challenging thing about starting your company, is that you're going to have to make a lot of mistakes. And I think it's good to make a lot of mistakes, fail as fast as you can, because you don't have that much time. So whether it was working with other people, it didn't match. So then you're asking yourself, is it me? Is it the other person? Or is it just doesn't match? Yeah. And then you need to discuss about this. It's also with customers. Sometimes they're very demanding. How do you manage customers who are asking you things that you cannot provide? So you have a lot of situations where you can easily fail. And
like, what would you call your biggest regret?
I think we should have failed faster sometimes, or realized that the directions where we're going was not working. So it's always about iterating, but sometimes the iteration was maybe a little bit too slow. I think I don't have any concrete example that was exactly this. Sure. But I think the pattern, what was this? I think that which relates to your previous question. I think you should fail and accept failure as a part of the journey. Yeah.
What would you consider success in life for you?
I'm still heavily thinking about this. What is a successful life? I still don't have any answer, but I think what is important is that if you work or if you interact with people who have each other like a mutual respect, and then you can create like great things. Basically, what you want to do is try to leave this place. We have limited time on Earth, and leave this place with the best legacy that you can. So I think that the success, I think, is probably looking retrospectively about what you did. But I don't think it's, for me, a plan about the future. This is what is a successful road for me. For me, it's always difficult to give an advice, because I don't think there is the silver bullet for success, or whatever you want to call it. Whether you succeed or fail, I think there's still a big part of that you cannot control. So I think you need to accept that you're not under control, at least everything. So you need to accept this uncertainty. Try to iterate as fast as possible. try to have, I think, also a balanced life. I think I realized, even though we made a huge progress the first year with Stairlin, that also I consumed a big part of myself in the process. So I think it's very important to play a long game and also just ask for help. Put your ego aside.
Okay, very cool. Bastien, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate for taking the time to come here, being the first guest in the studio. Thank you so much, everybody who tuned in to episode 171 of the Startup Show. Make sure you stay a few more seconds so you see who is up next Monday, and I'll see you there. Have a great Monday and a great week.
Hi everybody, this is Nustin. I'm one of the co-founders of Nomoco. I'm here with Cédric having an awesome discussion around entrepreneurship and what we're doing as a company. Tune in if you want to learn what the future of AR and VR is and how we as a company want to create the mirror world or a digital replica of the entire planet at some point, what good advices are for early entrepreneurs, and hope to see you Monday.